Little People, Big Dreams, L.M Montgomery. Written by Maria Isabel Sanchez Vegara, illustrated by Anushka Alapaz. Little Maud was born on Prince Edward Island in Canada. When she was very small, her mother passed away. Her father left her in the care of her grandparents and sailed off far away from the little island. Maud felt out of place at her grandparents' house. They were strict and grumpy, and it was almost impossible to get a smile out of them. But Maud loved to walk around the island, picking berries and naming everything she saw. For her, even apple trees had names, like Little Syrup, Gavin, or Spider. At home, books became Maud's very best friends, and she dreamt of becoming a writer one day. But her grandparents thought reading and writing was a waste of time, especially for a girl. So Maud started writing her own stories and poems in secret, smuggling candles into her room at night. She thought about the friends she'd found on her walks and imagined new worlds for them. When Maud was older, she became a teacher. It was not her favourite job, but it gave her time to write stories, and soon one was published in a magazine. Maud was then offered the chance to work at a newspaper. She was the only woman on the staff and wrote her first article under the pen name Cynthia. She loved every minute of her job. But not even 9 months had passed in her new post when her grandfather passed away. Maud had to go back home to take care of her elderly grandmother. But there was no way Maud would give up writing. She accepted a job at the local post office so she could send her work to newspapers without anyone noticing. Before long, 30 of her stories were in the papers. One day, Maud found an old newspaper with an interesting story. It said, "Elderly couple apply to orphan asylum for a boy. By mistake, a girl is sent to them." That night, she dreamt of this little girl, who became the star of Maud's next story, Anne of Green Gables. Once it was published, everyone loved the little girl with her freckles and thick red plaits. Anne was imaginative, brave, and though she got into scrapes, she was always loved. Through Anne's adventures, Maud rewrote her own childhood as she'd have liked it to be. And by telling Anne's story, Maud, the little girl who wasn't allowed to write, became the great author she always dreamt she could be. Lucy Maud Montgomery was born in a small wooden house on Prince Edward Island in Canada. Although her name was Lucy, she preferred to be called Maud without the E. When Maud was 1, her mother became ill and passed away. Her father then moved west to the mainland and sent Maud to live with her grandparents in the north of the island. Maud's childhood was lonely, as her grandparents showed her little affection or attention. So, she found solace through books, writing, and her imagination. When she was 9, she started writing poetry and journals. By the time she was a teenager, she was already publishing short stories in newspapers throughout North America. As an adult, Maud moved around, working as a teacher and at a newspaper, but had to return home to care for her grandmother. Then, one day, she was inspired by a newspaper story about a couple who adopted a child. They wanted a boy but were sent a girl instead. Maud wrote a novel based on this idea, calling it Anne of Green Gables. At first, it was rejected by every publisher, so she kept it in a hat box and forgot about it. Then 2 years later, she tried again. The book found its home and was published to great success. Everyone fell in love with Anne. Maud had created one of the most charming characters children's literature had ever seen. Maud went on to write 14 novels and became one of the best-loved authors in Canada and all over the world.